Hi, it's Mike DelSignore, Massachusetts OUI lawyer. Today's video, I want to talk about what happens if you're charged with OUI and your case is going to be heard in the Haverhill District Court. Haverhill is a court where I've had a lot of success in over the years. It's part of Essex County. So keep in mind when you're charged with an OUI, many people have been in your position before. It's easy to get arrested, difficult to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's a high burden of proof when you're charged with a crime. An OUI is a misdemeanor, so first offense, this is a type of crime where you're not realistically looking at jail time. Worst case scenario, you're looking at probation, having to do a program. So these aren't life-altering charges. If it's your second or third offense, some of the advice might be a little different, but generally speaking, first offense OUI, you're going to get through it. So let me tell you about some of the defenses, how you can get your license back. First, let's talk about the license implications of an OUI. If you refuse a breath test, you're looking at a 30-day fail a breath test. It's a 30-day suspension. So you're off the road for 30 days. After 30 days, you can get your full license back while I try to fight the case and try to get the breathalyzer excluded. Because breath test evidence doesn't always come into evidence in court. If you refused, it's a 6-month suspension, but if we can get a not guilty prior to the 6 months, there's a presumption of reinstatement of your license. So you might be able to get back on the road prior to the 6 months, but it will be most of the 6 months where you'll be suspended. So there's no immediate way to get back on the road if you refuse and want to fight the case. If you admit to the OUI, you could potentially get a hardship, but refusing the case means you're not driving unless you take a plea. And that's generally not a good idea because if you refused, typically it's not a very strong case, the OUI case. Now, let's talk about field sobriety tests. Why are field sobriety tests sometimes inaccurate and unreliable? Well, first of all, you're on the side of the road. The officer's asking you to do some unfamiliar exercises. In contrast to you, where you're being asked to learn the tests in 45 seconds, the officer spent a week at the academy. They were given a manual. They go over the tests, the clues. So it's a very different experience what the officer had from what you're given on the side of the road. On the side of the road, you're expected to be able to perform under pressure. There might be another officer, cars going by. So a lot of reasons why maybe this exercise doesn't reflect your best performance, and why the assumption that if you didn't follow instructions perfectly or if you stepped offline, it's related to alcohol. So when people take field sobriety tests and I look at the report, I often find things that help them that they don't see. In other words, a lot of reports on the 9-step walk and turn might say stepped offline, missed heel to toe, things like that. Those are relatively minor deviations. You're supposed to go out 9, heel to toe, 9 back, straight line, without stopping while walking. But I'm looking for things like stumbling, staggering, maybe more substantial indicators. Because if I can narrow their case down to these minor things like stepping offline, missing heel to toe, in my view, that doesn't get them beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the standard they need to prove the case. So we don't need to win every point, but we need to suggest that these tests are not significant, they're not substantial, they don't really help a judge or jury say you're impaired. We don't need to prove in an OUI case that you're innocent. Many times we're trying to show reasonable doubt. These can be close cases. It's not illegal to consume alcohol and drive. You have to show someone's impaired. Their ability to operate a vehicle is diminished. That's a subjective standard. Now, if you took a breathalyzer, how can you still win the case? Well, the breathalyzer doesn't always automatically come into evidence. There's certain assumptions about the machine that may not apply to you. So we may be able to win your case despite taking the breathalyzer in the case. So don't assume you need to accept a plea just because there's a breath test and it's over 0.08. The breath test may be inaccurate, make certain assumptions about you that might not be true. For example, the machine is converting your breath alcohol to a blood alcohol. It's using a formula, it's averages, called a partition ratio. That may not apply to you. So if you're charged with OUI, case is going to be in Haverhill, feel free to give me a call. My name's Mike DelSignore. Help people all over Massachusetts. Been doing this for about over 20 years now. It's feels like it's been my entire life helping people charged with drunk driving. I've represented nurses, doctors, electricians, plumbers, lawyers, you name the profession, teachers. I've helped them, and I can help you. Call, text anytime.